All right. Welcome everyone to Redemption and Recovery When Suppressed Wounds Begin to Heal. I'm your host. I was about to say I'm your guest, but I'm your host, Christina Jones, and we have a wonderful special guest this evening or this morning, wherever you're tuning in. This is Mr. Paul Doughty. Go ahead and introduce yourself,
Yes.
Paul.
Hello, Christina. Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Paul Doughty, and thanks for having me, Christina, and giving me the opportunity to share my story and to perhaps um, touch somebody and help somebody that may be going through something similar or have gone through something similar.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. But I do want to warn the listeners that, of course, on our show, Redemption and Recovery, we do share some things that may be triggering for you. So just wanted to throw out a trigger
Mm.
warning as we resume. Now, where are you tuning in from, Paul?
I'm tuning in from Scituate, Massachusetts, which is about 20 miles south of Boston.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. So it must be chilly over there.
It is. Well, yesterday we had some bad weather, some
Mhm.
rain, which it was warm. But yes, today it's about 30 some degrees. So we're preparing now for winter,
Okay,
unfortunately.
okay, okay. Awesome, awesome. I know it is chilly over here in Chicago. Like last night, the real field temperature was like -4 degrees. So, but I'm look
Yeah.
no.
No, no, no. I've spent some time in Chicago. I worked there for several months, and in the winter, and it's not the most pleasant city to be in the wind chill temperatures.
No, it's not.
Yes.
It's not. So let's dive right in, Paul. Tell us about
Yes.
your childhood.
Yeah, we'll start there as we talked because that's really where my struggles began. Um, I'm in, as I mentioned, I'm in Boston now, but I grew up in Pittsburgh, in a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we lived in a small house on top of the hill. I lived there with my parents and my two older sisters. It was a cute little house. It had a bunch of fruit trees. We had apple, we had a pear, we had cherry, we had orange, we had everything. And I only mention that because the setting, it makes it look so beautiful. And from the outside looking in, it does look like the beautiful family, but um, because my father was a coach, a football coach, and well ingrained in the community, and my mother was a dance teacher and a choreographer, and my sisters were baton twirlers that traveled and competitively twirling the batons. And I was just a 5 year old kid at this point, 4 or 5 years old. And as I mentioned, my sisters weren't home at the time, but my parents were in the kitchen with my uncle. And it was a small kitchen. When you first walked in, it had one of those rotary phones that had a 20-foot cord stuck, tied in about 20 knots that my sisters used to stretch across the house. And there was a small table that overlooked an open window to the sun porch. And my father was sitting at one side of the table, and my uncle was sitting at the other side of the table. And my mother was standing in the kitchen. And I was 4 years old and I heard an argument. So I peeked around the corner. And when I peeked around the corner, I saw my father pick up a half-gallon glass milk jug and swing it and hit my mother over the head. My mother falls to the ground. My uncle, he stands up and yells, "Doughty!" And as my mother laid there motionless, I thought she was dead. And that one incident, that one incident impacted me my whole life. And for half my life, I didn't realize the challenges it would present. And it took a lot of taking action to get out of that state. So that's where things started. And so the abuse, that type of abuse, witnessing that type of abuse happened for 8 years until I was 11 years old. And during this time, my again, my sisters were involved in that. I started playing football, and again, would look like the perfect family. Um, and then I lost my train of thought for a second.
You said it seemed like the
Apologies.
perfect. No, it's okay. You said it seemed like the
Yeah.
perfect family.
it seemed like the perfect family, but it was far from it. There was, as I mentioned, for 8 years, I witnessed this abuse, and so my parents finally divorced. Finally, when I was 11 years old, and you would think that things would get better, but they didn't. Um, my parents weren't around. My father wasn't there. He left, but my mother wasn't home. She was actually living with a priest, and so we lived. We had a house over our heads, but that was about it. Our parents weren't around. One month would have electricity. Next month would have no heat. They were optional. We used to huddle around the stove. I was told to get warm at times. I remember going out and collecting soda bottles so I could get something to eat. So I was unsupervised during my whole teenage years, but there were really two things that saved me during this time. Because at the age of 12, with nobody around, my oldest sister was a senior in high school. So, there were parties going on, right? So there was a lot of that going on. So, again, I was playing football at the time. That's one of the things that saved me. Because from third grade through 12th grade, I played football. And in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, when no one was around, I had to walk to practice 1 mile each way for 3 years. And I often asked myself, why in the hell did I do that? It would have been so easy to quit, right? Nobody would have noticed. Hell, nobody was around. Nobody would have said anything. But that was my family. It was kind of where I felt safe. It was where I could express myself without words. And so I felt safe there. So I played football through high school, but again, the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, that by making that decision to continue to walk the practice saved my life. And the second thing that saved my life, and it was my grandmother. And this is again during times where I was a lost soul. I was drinking. I was heavy into drugs and doing whatever I wanted. And I had a supportive adult that helped me, even though she didn't know it. And that was my grandmother. My grandmother, she lived in a 5-story apartment building that overlooked the park where we all hung out. And I would often see her looking out of that 5th-story sun porch window, and she would know. She would know when you got out of someone's car. She would know who you were hanging out with. She could see and smell things from a half-mile away. She had a nose like a golden retriever, I say. But my grandmother was my anchor. That's where I felt safe. That's where it was normal. That's where I learned my manners and what was right from wrong. But I never told her of the abuse that was going on. I never told anybody. And so she was my rock and didn't even know it. And so, we didn't tell anybody. We didn't tell anybody what was going on. And that's one of the things that when I speak to teenagers about, I talk to them about many things, but when I talk to them, I talk about speaking up and asking for help when you need it and removing those masks that we hide behind. So, so staying on that topic, because again, I experienced all of this kind of trauma in my teenage years. So growing up, after that, I always felt like I wanted to help others and teenagers in particular, because I was so impacted during my teenage years. So I do speak to teenagers in my speaking business about these 3 things, and that's speaking up and asking for help and removing those masks that we're hiding behind, and also about getting involved. Again, sports and football in particular saved me because it helped me develop character and valuable life skills that I used later on, and I didn't self-isolate, which we do so often when we are depressed. And the third thing is embracing self-discovery and taking that first step out of our comfort zone. It's so hard to do, right? So those three things, when you do those three things, you're taking action. And when you take that action, you're building resilience. And resilience is, a lot of definitions about resilience are about bouncing back from a traumatic or event or something. But I think it's more than that. It's about growing in the process, which is also part of the definition, but because you learn and grow by each of these challenges that you overcome. And I overcame many of them. The domestic violence is just one of many that we experience as we go through life, because life isn't easy. Life is tough. It's about how hard you get hit and keep going. So I will keep going. Should I?
So let's take a quick, let's kind of go back a little bit, because
Please.
I love what you're doing for the youth, but I wanted to kind of go back to you being that little boy and you're watching your father beat on your mother, and this was a span of 8 years. At that particular time, did you feel helpless, or what was going through your mind at that age?
Well, as I mentioned, it's a great question, and it's one that should be hard to answer, but it's pretty easy. After I witnessed that first event, I blacked out. I mean, all the other stories and things that I have been told are from my sisters. I really separated. There's other stories that have been told that, I mean, I remember, there's, fighting in the bedroom and a couple things like that, but the other stories that I've been told, I don't remember. So, it was a defense mechanism. Obviously, I just separated. But the bad part about that, it was good back then, but the bad part about it, I separated for 30 years. I didn't take action for 30 years. So all of those high school years and then through college, all the years in college, I was still doing the drugs and alcohol, heavy. And then after college, I started playing rugby. I played rugby for 11 years. And rugby and drinking kind of go together. So it wasn't a good combination, although it was the best time of my life because I gained lifelong friends. But that wasn't a good combination at that time. And at the time, during that time that I was playing rugby and doing the drugs and alcohol, I was going through the motions all through life. That's what I did, as we said, for 30 years. And it was like in high school, I liked my physics class, so I'll major in physics. My sister went to California State, an education school. I'll go there. There's no thought. It didn't matter. Um, so yeah, and during these times, and then again going through the motions, and okay, what's next in my life? Well, I'm supposed to get married, aren't I? So I got married and I had 2 kids, and keeping in mind, well, I'm doing this, I'm also starting a career. I went to college, I came out and I started in the IT industry, so that was a good thing. So I was, all the things I should have been doing, I was doing with kind of just going through the motions. And what's next? So I got married and had 2 kids, and then yeah, I was in a bad spot. I was in a situation where I was a lost soul, doing things which I shouldn't have been doing, treating people the wrong way, and I find myself 32 years old and lost. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. You're welcome. I might as well keep going. So this is where kind of things change, but there's still struggles after that. So so I was married with, as I mentioned, with 2 kids, and running around doing the wrong things, and um, I took action. I took action, and I saw a therapist. I took that first step out of my comfort zone and saw a therapist. And when I started going through therapy, it was apparent to the therapist that I didn't remember anything about the abuse that I witnessed. So the therapist had contacted my mother and said, you should write Paul a letter and give him some information. So my mother wrote me a letter that provided me some context of when things happened and why and what happened, but really not why. So that letter and some therapy, some of this fog that I was living behind, a little bit dissipated. Um, my mother had given me a book 2 years earlier, and it sat on the shelf, a book called 101 Ways to Transform Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And I started reading this book, which was it's a very I don't know, want to say deep, but it's a very spiritual kind of a book. And this book, along with the therapy and getting information, I started to break through the fog, and things started to happen. So I had just told my wife and kids getting a divorce, and I was leaving. So I made that announcement, and I got in my car, and I was assigned to a project in Cleveland at the time. So I go to Cleveland, and I get to Cleveland, and the project site is right next to a church. Now, I never used to go to church, didn't have much interest in church back then. So I went over at the power hour at lunch for a few times, and I went to church a few times. And then I ended up writing a letter to the priest. I wrote him a letter and met with him. And the letter kind of explained, I'm going through all this change. I just left my kids. I don't know what's going on. I'm on this drugs and alcohol. And the result of that meeting, he said, just pray. Just pray. What is it that you want from me right now, oh Lord? Okay. So I left with that. A couple months later, sitting in a bar, Penn Monroe in Monroeville, drowning my sorrows. It's busy. It's loud. There's the bartenders are taking care of all the patrons. There's a DJ playing behind me. He's playing music, and I'm sitting there drowning my sorrows. And I look at a bottle of vodka that's behind the bar, and I say, what is it that you want from me right now, oh Lord? And as I said that, the DJ said, yes, that is God. Okay. I didn't turn around to look at him. I knew he was talking to me. And then again, things started to happen. Another time I was looking for a place to pray. Again, not always looking for a place to pray, but this particular day, I wanted to pray for some reason. So I was in this busy area. It was a busy coastal area, beach area that was all public. And I said, well, let me drive this coastal road and see if I can find a place to pray. So I'm driving along this coastal road. I come down this hill, and then there's this big opening overlooking the ocean. I said, oh, all right. Well, I pulled my car down, and I come walking up. And I come walking up, and then there's this circular formation in the ground outlined with rocks. It was a labyrinth. Well, labyrinths have been used for thousands of years as a spiritual tool for meditation and reflection. So a labyrinth has one way in and one way out. So I started walking through this labyrinth, and I get to the center of the labyrinth. And when I get to the center of the labyrinth, there's this little pile of rocks. And sticking out of this pile of rocks is a crucifix of Jesus. And this overlooks a lighthouse that flashes 1, 4, 3 all day and all night long for I love you. Somebody was trying to tell me something. So September 12th, 1998, I quit drinking. And it's been 26 years since I've had a drink.
That's awesome.
And that all occurred. All of that occurred is because I took action. I took that first step out of my comfort zone, and I didn't self isolate. I could have easily be dead by now, most definitely, if I didn't quit drinking. That's an easy topic.
Right.
Um, but yeah, just because I opened up, I was before I was keeping everything in and blocking everything out, and just by breaking down those barriers and letting things in and becoming open, that's how all of that occurred, and that's what got me over that biggest hump of witnessing domestic violence and alcohol and drugs.
Yes. Wow. I mean, it's an amazing story, and so many people have been through the things that you've gone through. And I do know that part of trauma and traumatic experiences is that sometimes some of your memory is just blocked. It's like, I really don't remember nothing that happened, you know? So in your time of isolation, what would you tell yourself today? Like today, what would you tell yourself at that moment? It's you kind of already said it, as into how you're speaking with others and things and such.
Yeah, much of that.
Yeah. So, but what would you like if you can get into the car with the younger Paul and just talk to the younger Paul who's just like isolated from everyone and just you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
What a question. Great question. Things will get better, Paul. And you know, everyone has adversity to some level. Now, your adversity may have been a little worse than others, but all kids have some type of struggle, and all families have dysfunction. It's just what level and different levels of dysfunction and problems. And know that you can overcome that, and you will gain so much growth, and by overcoming those challenges and adversities that you've had earlier on, you will come through it even stronger than you could ever imagine, by just understanding that you'll get through it.
That's beautiful. Now, what if that younger Paul says, like, man, I don't even know the first step. Like, how can I take the first step? What would you say to Paul or to the younger Paul?
Yeah, again, the first step is taking that step out of your comfort zone, right? And um, the first step requires a commitment as well, right? It requires a commitment that you want to get better. You have to break out of that ego that society has left us with, what you should be and what you can't be and what you cannot do. And that ego, we have to lose that ego and those negative thoughts. So I think that's the biggest thing is staying in a positive mindset. That's one of the main things that helped me get through it, is staying in a positive mindset. Most definitely.
Yeah, because yeah, a lot of people are just like I said, a lot of people are in that place where you're at now, and then they'll continue years and years and years of trying to self-medicate. And
Yeah.
do you believe that's what you're doing with the drugs and the alcohol?
Yeah. Yeah. And I I feel bad for those that struggle with trying to quit addiction, because mine was divine intervention. I know it. I had the faith. I had a knowing that there was that better side. And it's hard to explain somebody that is a dark in a dark place like I was, that to have faith. How can I have faith? But that's really what it is. You have to have faith. You have to have a knowing, and knowing is different than a thought, right? Have a knowing that I'm going to get better. I'm going to quit this. And you obviously, have to have the support structure. If you're hanging out in bars or hanging out with the wrong people, it's not going to work, right? You have to separate your life from that dark side, and that's not always easy to do. So again, I sympathize with those that struggle, because I didn't. Mine was a commitment and a snap of the fingers. And fortunately, but like I said, so many people struggle, so many, and it's sad. But I try to help as many people as I can, and just talk through it. But it's difficult to for someone that is totally lost, like I was, to understand that faith and having that faith will get you through it.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I just believe that God loves us so much to the point that you may have a moment, like say you're in your darkest place, and God may remind you of like, hey, you remember that nice guy Paul? You remember he was sharing his story and he talked about how he overcame, and or when Paul walked next to you and he shook your hand or he embraced you, you know? So I think sometimes
Yeah.
when we have like those like thoughts, just like you just reflected earlier about your grandmother and her being a place of refuge for you,
Yes.
despite all the chaos and all that stuff that was going on, it's like God sent her as that saving grace. And you talked to that priest, and then you went to the bar and you seen the bottle of vodka, and then the DJ is like, "That's God."
Yeah.
And then you're seeing the I can't even pronounce the word correctly. The labyrinth,
Labyrinth. You labyrinth.
labyrinth,
Yes.
labyrinth. Seeing that in the
Yeah.
flashing, and then you see the lighthouse and the words of "I love you." I just think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful.
It is, and I should save this for the end. But what's what's amazing is that I now wake up and go to bed every night to that lighthouse flashing 143. So, um, yeah, it is amazing. It is amazing.
It, it is. It
I,
is.
I, 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 and you talked about it. Before I wanted to mention something. It's about being open. It's
Yes.
about being open. If I like I said, I was so closed. You couldn't
Mhm.
you couldn't have got through. I was like steel, right? You couldn't have got to me, but I had to open. I had to lose those masks that I was hiding behind and those barriers. You have to lose that to be able to receive. If you're blocked off, you'll stay that way.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so true. So let's
Yeah.
let's kind of get, because I know you said that you know what you tell the youth, but do you also like coach adults, like life coaching or anything like that? If someone wanted to reach out to you.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind that. A lot of people have asked that question, but no, I don't. I'm mostly a public and survivor speaker. I primarily speak to teenagers at this point, although my message obviously can relate to all ages. Yeah, I'm also writing a book. Um, Resilience, my ultimate superpower. I actually just finished the final review before I got on this podcast, so I sent it back off. It's not too far off from that. And the book itself, I mentioned this because it follows my speaking story and my speaking to the teenagers, to the youth. So my book kind of follows that message. In addition, I'm creating and having a TV series written. We had a treatment. It's called written. Now we're taking the next step to actually write the script of a TV series that will actually follow part of my life. It won't follow like the book and the speaking business. It'll be more of a following the life of Paul Doughty. A
Mm.
lot what we talked about and others. Yes.
Congratulations on that. I think that's very, very great and it's very much needed. With your book that you're going to be releasing very soon, would you consider doing audio, or have you thought about releasing audio with that? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I intend
okay.
to record it myself. I think it becomes more powerful um, in doing that. So yes, that is my intention is to do that soon after it gets published.
That is awesome. Are you taking pre-orders now for that book or not yet?
You know that I've never been asked that question, Christina, but I'm going to write that down.
Write it down, Paul.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna take a, I'm gonna look into that. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's more so like the anticipation, you know. It's like, hey, go ahead and get these pre-orders. My book will be out very soon.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I'm gonna look into that. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's
Yes.
continue. Let's continue with your story.
Yeah. So again, I had the awakening, what I call it, kind of coming out, and um, I then I again I was traveling, so I was traveling for my job in IT, and I met my second wife. My second wife was from Boston. I lived in Pittsburgh, and she had three kids. I had two kids, and I ended up getting married. Um, she lived with me and her three kids. Lived with us in Pittsburgh for 3 or 4 years. She hated Pittsburgh because it was Midwest and not close to the beach, so she was familiar with. So we moved back. Me, her, and when we moved back, we had a child at that point. So it was the Brady Bunch. We had the three. I had the three stepkids. I have two myself, and then a third with my second wife. So um, good to say that all six kids love me, and I love them. I have good relationships with all of them. But so I was married for 23 years, but after about 10, 11 years, things weren't so good. My wife, ex-wife, my X2, as I say, unfortunately, was emotionally abusive. Um, and, I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a say. There were so many things. And I want to mention this because I think that I was receptive, not receptive, but it was hard for me to realize the second time that I was in an abusive situation because I don't know if I was used to it or it just took me a while to kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Um, as at the same time, after about 11, 12 years, again, I said I was married for 23 years, I had found out that my wife was having an affair of 12 years. So, um, yeah, so she was having an affair, and that's why she was emotionally abusive, right? Of course, she didn't want me there. Again, I traveled 4 days a week. I would come home on Thursday for the weekend, and it wouldn't be fun. She didn't want me there. So as I was going through this bad divorce, and it was again there was 10 years that it was bad, the marriage. And while I was going through that bad part of the marriage, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And I had Lyme disease for 4 years, roughly 4 years before I knew it. And if you're familiar with Lyme disease, it affects your muscles, your joints, cognitive. I lost 50% of my hearing. And after you have Lyme disease for 4 years, it's very difficult to get rid of it. The longer it's in your body, it's a tick disease that you get from a deer, and the longer it's in your body, the longer it's harder to get rid of. So I was on antibiotics for 4 years, three different ones at one time, different ones. So I was on three this month. For 4 years, I was on different antibiotics, going up and down. It tore me apart. And Lyme disease in itself tears you apart. So I'm in a marriage where my wife is emotionally abusive. I'm in this Lyme disease that's attacking me, and and I got to get a drink. 1 second. So I have this Lyme disease, and I was depressed. I came out because Lyme disease in itself make you depressed. Lyme disease, along with the antibiotics and my emotionally abusive and my wife cheating on me, I was suicidal. I was at the wit's end. And what ended up happening is, I was sitting, isolating, self isolating, staring at the walls, no motivation, all the depression symptoms. And I took action. I said, I got to do something here. So it's something again came across my desk. My sister's son went to school, so had his friend's mother owned a place in Orlando called the Healing House that offered TMS therapy, transcranial trans, TMS therapy, magnetic stimulation, transcranial magnetic stimulation. And I was going through therapy at the time, and I was, on different medications trying to get through this. And again, I found TMS therapy. Now, this transcranial magnetic stimulation, they offer this only to people that have gone through all of the therapy and different drugs and trying different things, but still are not breaking through. And what it is they put they do a mapping of your head, and they look for different spots. Like your depression zone is over here, and then in most TMS places only do one spot on your head. This place did three because they specialized in Lyme disease. So I also found a place that also specialized in Lyme disease. It was, again, God works in crazy ways. So, so they put this thing on your head. I'll try to be quick here, and they put your arm, rest it like this, and they look for different spots on your head, and your hand goes like this, involuntarily, looking for different spots. So then they put this thing on your head, and they tap here, say every 10 seconds for 10 seconds. Over here, they tap 5 seconds every second. Something. There's different variations. I can't remember what they were. But I did that for 30 days, every day. I went to Florida. My sister lived there. So I went to Florida, stayed there for 30 days. I walked into that place physically crying. I was crying, physically crying when I walked in there. And I came out a new man. It saved me. Most definitely. It saved me. So transcranial magnetic stimulation is something that all people should be familiar with if they're having a depression, if they're in a depressive state and they've tried other things, because it saved my life, most definitely. And again, it's about stepping out of your comfort zone and taking that first step, right? Just saying that something's got to change here. And so that's happened to me on a few occasions. And so that got me over that hump, but I was still in an abusive marriage. My I if I tried to offer my wife everything for 4 years. She wouldn't accept any offer. We live in a 1,400 square foot home. She stayed in the bedroom. I slept on the couch for 4 years, and um, I never, after I got through the TMS therapy and I was back to myself, many people would have resorted back to, say, alcohol, or resorting back to something to numb the pain again. And I think it was my faith again that kept me from that, because when I did quit drinking, I knew that it was divine intervention. So it's never really crossed my mind again. And so, that was something that I was able to do that. I wanted to point that out as well. So again, I'm in this abusive relationship. My wife won't leave. I'm sleeping on the couch. I'm providing every offer that possible. And, my one son is still living at home. He was in college at the time. He didn't even come home from college one summer, because who would want to live like that? And we lived in that 1,400 square foot house for 4 years, and really didn't say a word to each other. Imagine, for 4 years. how tension, the tension there. It was incredible. But so finally, I had one attorney and she didn't do much. So I got another attorney and he's a little more aggressive. So we finally got into court. We were going into court, but you try to resolve things beforehand. You go in, and so we met beforehand, and we came to a resolution before we had to go see the judge, and we just went there and kind of hashed it out or said him what we're doing. And part of that agreement was that we would go through the house together, and you take this, I'll take that, take turns on selecting what we want. So I don't know. I went out and I came home that night, and she's packing all this stuff in boxes, and I'm like, "What are you doing, you kleptomaniac?" That wasn't nice, but that's what I said, and and she didn't say anything. So I walked over. There was a picture that I knew I wanted. She's taking everything. Well, I'm going to take that picture. So I went and grabbed that picture, and I start walking away, and I get pushed from the back. I get pushed again. And then I'm trying to go around the couch. She hits me again. And so I'm like hanging over the couch, holding this picture and my phone, trying to get a picture. And I couldn't. So I just dropped the picture, and I went outside and called 911. And that's how I ended up getting her out of the house. So that wasn't easy, that was quite an experience at that point. But that's when I finally, after 4 years of this, that's when I was free. That's when I was finally free. Yeah.
That, because I really don't hear a lot of stories of men talking about the abuse from women. Yeah, sometimes we get a bit mouthy, but it can be
Yeah.
abusive. But she physically abused you as well towards the end.
Yeah. Yeah. She lost it. She lost it at the end. And you know what? If that were me, if I would have been the abusive one there, I would have been locked up, handcuffs, thrown in jail. And with her, they were just like, yeah, you sure? Is that how it happened? It was like, and they finally say that, okay, we're going to take her out of here. And that was it. She wasn't able to come back. So,
Wow.
it's true. Most of the abuse that you hear is the other way around, as it was in my earlier years.
Well, thank you for being
Yeah.
vulnerable enough to share that. Now, were there any red flags at the beginning of you all coming together, or no?
Looking back, of course. Yeah. Looking back, I saw the aggressiveness, the quickness to be brash, so yeah, looking back, I did see it, but I was in love. She was beautiful. Everything was right. Yeah, I thought so. But yeah, so yeah, I learned. It took me a while, but I learned. Yeah.
Now, but with were you able to go? Did you go back to the healing center, or were you able to get some help with that or support?
The Healing House in Orlando. No, I haven't gone back. Well, after I did the 30 sessions, there was like a couple months later, I had some other sessions still on my insurance. So I went back for a little tune-up, and they say that's really a good thing to do as well, is to, go back later to get that. So, I keep a pretty good eye on my state of being and my depression, if you will, and I'm pretty quick to act if I see myself, acting in the wrong way and not doing self-isolating and staring at the wall like I did for so long.
Yeah. So in your life, do you have accountability partners, or how important is accountability?
I don't have accountability partners. No. I've always been pretty good at making myself accountable. People have. I only say this because people just recently have said, because over the past year and a half, when I started the speaking business. I did the book. I started the book and the TV series. I delayed all of that because of that relationship I was in. Right. I didn't want to get to this point and still be in that relationship. So, it wasn't until this past year that I really have shifted my mindset and my gears towards this. And I finally, you know, I prayed. I pray every day and um, for what I trust in the plan is what I always say. I trust in our plan, Father. I trust in our plan. And it took me 60 years. Took me 60 years, but my plan came together, and this is it. And my plan that I had been thinking of was always to help people, as I said earlier, and that is my intention with what I'm doing now, is to help people that have gone through similar things and are going through challenges in general. Because it doesn't matter what the struggle is. These teenagers today, oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine being a teenager today and what they're struggling with. There's so much. Yeah, it was easy when I was young. You're much younger than me, but it was much easier.
Oh, can you hear me? All right. So you all have heard an amazing story. An amazing story. I think we're having just a little technical difficulties. Please bear with us as Paul comes back. But Paul just shared a powerful story about, witnessing domestic violence. And he talked about how he blocked that out. Somehow it was blocked out of his mind for almost 8 years. He also talked about isolation, how he isolated himself, and how God brought him out of those dark places. And a lot of us go through different things in life. Hey, Paul.
Yeah, was I? Yeah, I was here while you were talking. I
Oh,
saw you.
okay.
I didn't know I wasn't on camera.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Okay.
so I'm here.
Okay. So you're gonna come back on camera? It might
Um,
be.
yeah, I'm on camera. You don't see me?
I do not, but let's. Well, I see your name, but you can
Would
you can continue. You can continue. Maybe it's just maybe it might be on my end, but I do see your name.
Okay, wait. My video keeps going off. I don't know if because the bandwidth is. Can you see me now?
I cannot.
Ah, all right. Would you want me to exit and come back in, or just we'll just finish as is?
We can finish as is because you'll
Oh,
still have the audio recording, and I was just kind of filling people in about your story.
all right, very good.
So you can continue, Paul.
Yeah, I forgot where we left off. Yeah, I think for the most part, I don't know if there's too much more.
I
I
you
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think we were talking about accountability.
Oh yes, yeah,
Yes,
yes. Thank
yeah.
you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
yeah, people had just recently said that because that's where right because I just started this over a year and a half ago, right? My new business, and I'm committed. I come into this little office. And I come in here every day and I work 8 hours a day. No one's, and I do it every day. And I'm committed and I move everything forward. It's slowly but surely. And So the accountability, I've always been able to be accountable to myself for some reason. But that's, yeah, I don't have accountability partner. I let myself do that.
But at least you are accountable to yourself, because some may not have that either, the like willpower, or just to say, I don't want to end up back in that dark place again. I don't want to self-medicate, and you did that. You're an overcomer. Now,
Yes.
what advice would you give someone, because it's like you came out of a situation as a child and then you ended up back in a situation that's similar. And what advice would you give someone who's feeling like, what, now I have this disease, I'm depressed, I don't know what else to do at this point?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. I think one of the things is to have the faith, and have the faith that, again, as I mentioned, things will get better. And oh, sorry, I got sidetracked. I got sidetracked.
It's okay.
Um, yeah, have the faith. Um, I'm trying to think back on when you were talking, and there was one thing that came to mind that I wanted to elaborate on, and I've lost that. So that's why I'm stumbling a little bit, trying to get back that thought that I lost when you were talking. So can you ask that question one more time, and maybe it'll come back to me?
Yeah. It's okay. But you're doing a great job. So what I was saying was that if there's this person, because it seems like, okay, you've seen, it's like you had that come to God moment, and you're
Yeah.
coming out of this, but then you get into this relationship, and now you're being abused, and it's like the cycle kind of repeats itself. And then, some people may go back to saying, what, now I have Lyme disease, or this some type of disease or depression, and I just don't know how to get out of this situation. Like everything else seems so good, and then now, boom, this happened to my life.
Yeah, a great question. Because when I was in that kind of the second abusive situation, I wonder why I didn't realize sooner. Why didn't I realize this sooner? I ask myself all the time. So I think what it's important, and I mention this to the teenagers, and it's about anything, and it's hard to do. It's really hard to do, is to step back, stop, step back, and actually look at the situation as if you are out of, like, if you're looking at it from somebody else's perspective. So take a step back and take a look at it and say, what the hell is going on here? Because so many times we're so ingrained in what's happening, that we're so deep into it, whatever it is, like accepting the abuse as I was the second time, so deep into drugs and alcohol. We're so deep into it that we don't realize it. So we have to stop, physically stop, mentally stop, and take a step out of our consciousness and look at what the hell is going on, because it's not easy to figure out sometimes, because for whatever reason we accept it, we live with it, when we don't need to.
That's a really great explanation and a great answer, because you just have to, like you said, step back and just look at it. Look at the situation for what it is. I
Yeah.
know when my father was going through recovery, one of the things that he learned was three-dimensional thinking, and it's almost kind of like the analogy that you gave. Step back, and you want to assess the situation to see what's really going on, and then now you gotta take that next step to like figure out what will be your next step, you know, so that we
Isn't
don't
that
step.
great?
Yes.
I love that. I love that. And I know you mentioned your father. Good. A shout out to your father for being clean for the number of years that he has. As we had said earlier, it's not an easy feat. It's easier for some than others. But stay strong, and you'll continue to get through it. As they say, every day is a new day. And, as somebody said to me, every day is a great day, right? Did you ever miss one?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That is beautiful. Now, how can people get in touch with you, Paul? I know you have the book coming out, you have the TV series coming out. How can they reach you?
Yeah, the best place to reach me would be pdspeaks.com. pdspeaks.com. That'll point you to all the information, it'll point you to all my social sites as well. So that's the place to go, pd.com or pdspeaks.com. And I'll be posting within the next month or so that my book will be announced or published, and I'll also put together some pre-order type thing that I've been. It was mentioned that would be a good idea, so I'm going to do that as well.
Yes, yes. And then, do you have any final words for the listeners?
Um, I've said so much, and there's so many things that you can take from this, but I'll leave it with this, and it's about time. It's about time. There was this star that exploded 300,000 years ago. Sears 2113, I think 2112, I think it was called. And this star exploded, this star exploded 300,000 years ago. And the light from that star exploding has just reached Earth.
Mm.
It's exploded 300,000 years ago, and the light just reached Earth.
Wow.
And the speed of light is 286,000 miles per second.
Mm.
And it took 300,000 years for that light to get here. That's pretty big. That's pretty big, pretty long. And you know that the average person lives about 27,000 days, about 72 years, 27,000 days. It's not that long. Our life is a mere blink of an eye. So we need to take every opportunity we have to live each day, and to accept and to be happy with that particular day. I smile and wake up, and I wake up and smile because it's a new day.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's the message, is time. We don't have the time. Our life is a mere blink of the eye.
Hmm. That's a beautiful explanation as well. Yes. Let me look and see if there are any questions. So let me take a moment to look at that really quickly. Okay. So we had someone say good evening and hello, my friend Shatrivia. She's an HIV advocate. So just wanted to say hi to her. And then we had Paul. Now, but that name is spelled similar to yours.
What's that?
There was someone on here who said that they could only see me.
The whole time or just at the end?
I think just towards the end.
Okay, just at the end.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, Paul, I just want to thank you. I just really want to thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. Very, very powerful story. As I mentioned before, it's definitely a story of redemption and recovery, or the redemptive power. And I just wish you the best. And I hope we keep in touch. I look forward to your TV series. I look forward to your book. And I look forward to everything that you're about to do, and that God is going to just continue to expand your territory. And anyone who wants to get in touch with Paul, if you want to find out about his books, about his TV series, if you want to book him to come out and speak to the youth, or maybe even those who are in recovery, you will go to PD Speaks. So it's P as in Paul, D as in Doughty, or yeah, Doughty
Yeah.
Speaks. And that's just common spelling, SPEAKS.com. So again, pdspeaks.com. Very simple. So again, thank you, Paul. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Christina. Have a good day and God bless.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.